This episode of Engineering the Future is brought to you by Epic Training, supporting engineers since 1992. Epic Training knows the transition to working from home has been difficult for both businesses and employees. That is why we've converted all our courses to online to keep engineers and technologists on track. For more information on how we can help your company thrive, visit epictraining.ca.
This podcast is brought to you by OSPE, the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, the advocacy body for professional engineers in the engineering community in Ontario.
Welcome to Engineering the Future, a podcast presented by the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. I am your host, Jerome James. Today, I'm joined by Sandro Perruzza, OSPE CEO, to talk about how OSPE advocates for the engineering profession. To start off, Sandro, can you tell us what advocacy actually means?
Sure. At OSPE, advocacy for the engineering profession means that constantly reminding government, industry, media, and society in general that engineers are critical to the success of the world we live in. We believe that this pursuit of influencing outcomes or creating change is vital. David Koplu, who's a past president, past chair, and past CEO of DuPont Canada, thought that his path to success was based on his engineering knowledge and experience. But later on, he really became to realize that the true success came from his ability to influence others and influence them to create a better world for everyone. And that's really what OSPE is all about. Through OSPE, we focus on key issues such as diversity inclusion, energy, the environment, research and innovation, resilient infrastructure are kind of some of the things that we really focus on that we think engineers can bring some value to. But that's not enough. We really want the world to be better for everyone. And the other thing too is OSPE is really the only independent membership organization that represents the entire engineering community, from professional engineers, engineering graduates, engineering students, the whole gambit.
That's great. Can you break down why government should actually care about what engineers have to say? Like, why is that important?
Sure. Well, Jerome, you would know engineers are trained to think differently. They really have critical problem-solving abilities, the extensive knowledge and expertise to develop solutions to the problems society is facing. When you think of all the problems that we're facing, there is a technological solution to them. And engineers have that ability to understand technology, and more importantly, how to use that technology to provide solutions. And governments don't have that experience. They don't have that knowledge, and certainly don't have that know-how of how to do this. So there's a lack of engineering knowledge in government, and this is why OSPE is so important. Engineers also have a duty to protect the public and the environment. And so therefore, there's a natural fit for understanding the problems that government have, and engineers being able to develop solutions. It's part of your makeup. It's part of your duty to protect, again, the public and the environment. And as a society, it's a great example is to look at COVID and how it's really crippled the world through this pandemic. And certainly the medical profession has stood up and really have helped. But we can't underappreciate the value that engineers provided. Everything from retooling to develop new PPE and respirators and the other things that we needed to get through this, but also looking at air quality, looking at engineering new vaccines. Engineers were part of that. Biomedical engineers were part of that. So really, it's understanding how engineers can step up, look at a variety of different problems, and create a better world.
Very interesting. So it's using engineering and engineers' experiences in the everyday world to inform sound, better public policy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, Jerome, it is. It's not just the engineer's experience and knowledge and training, but it's also their personal knowledge, their personal training, the things that they've gone through, in life. For example, we experience this global anti-racism movement that's magnified issues of systemic racism and discrimination. Well, engineers have experienced that themselves through their careers. So they brought that to light and have shared those stories with us. And that's why OSPE has, really spent a lot of time discussing equity, diversity, and inclusion in engineering and in creating a more diverse profession. At our last EDI forum, we've had over 1,500 people attend virtually and discuss the issues, and not only discuss them, but actually talk about solutions that need to be implemented in the workplace and how to do that.
Right. So can you tell me what the OSPE process is? What's OSPE's, would you say, process to advocacy?
Yeah, it's we really use. There's no tried and true equation. It really, we have to look at the situation, but we kind of follow these 5 steps whenever we come up with an advocacy issue. So the first thing is, obviously, you got to identify the issue. What are we really going to tackle? And what is the underlying problem we're trying to solve? So there are task forces or committees, of course, made up of engineers and subject matter experts. We consult with our members through surveys, focus groups, needs assessment, questionnaires. Our board of directors are influential here as well. They bring issues to light, things that they've seen and heard through their work experience or life experience and have brought to the table at board meetings. And then most importantly, and I think this is where we have really demonstrated our value to government, is through direct invitations from government for consultation. Some public consultations, but quite a few are private consultations where we get brought into their advisory committees and are asked questions and are asked to provide our perspective on things. So the first thing is really identifying what that issue is. And we do that through various ways. The second thing is then we conduct our own research. We try to clarify what that issue is. So both economically and sectorial research, labor market analysis, government policy evaluations. Again, we have senior staff, policy experts at OSPE who do a lot of this research, bring it forward to the advisory committees for them to review and our task forces to review. Some of it actually government pays us to go and do some research through government funded projects. So that's kind of nice when government trusts us and our expertise and our track record to go and do some of the research that informs government. And so we do, again, we do a various ways of conducting research to understand what the issue is, the impact on our stakeholders, engineers, the impact on society in general. And then the third step is we consult our membership. There are experts who aren't on our task forces, people who have a perspective. Again, maybe it's not a technical perspective. Maybe it's a personal perspective, something that they've gone through in their lives here in Canada or internationally. So we want to understand how this issue is going to impact them personally. And we also do member consultations in town halls, online surveys, focus groups with our members on this issue.
Right.
And then we've set up something called the Engage Forum, which is a members-only forum where members can discuss this, and that really does influence our task forces. To see how members react to certain issues.
Excellent.
Yeah, and then the last 2 steps is based on all that. All that input goes back to the advisory committee and task force. We construct a plan. We develop short, medium, long-term goals and outline what the objectives we hope to reach. And then our final path is then we reach out to our stakeholders, whether it's government, whether it's other associations who are like-minded. And then we start that outreach to really influence decisions on a large scale, because of course we can't control what government does, but we can influence, and really that's our role.
Right. Excellent. So you've laid out the process. You've talked about the research. You've talked about engaging with partners and whatnot. Can you point to some of the outcomes of this type of advocacy?
Sure. I first think it's really important to realize is what are the outcomes. I mentioned that earlier as
Hmm.
one of our first steps is, once we identify the issue, what are the outcomes we want to do? So as an advocacy association representing engineers, the first thing we really want to talk about is positively impact the image, influence, and the value of the engineering profession. So
Right.
let me quickly talk about those things first. The image is we're talking about upholding and enhancing the reputation of engineers. When you look at surveys of most respected professions, engineers about the middle of the pack. We certainly want that to go up more. We look at which groups are at the top, and it's usually doctors, nurses, those people who are those professions who directly impact individuals. So we need to do is talk about how engineering directly impacts you individually in society. So image is one. Influence, again, it's about the ability of the engineering profession to influence direction in society, direction in public policy, to ensure that we are creating a better province, a better country, a better world. And that influence also means that when engineers speak, people listen. They don't dismiss them outright. So we want to increase influence. And of course, the value. As we can look at that as either the income that engineers make, or really the value that society takes into consideration, both engineers and engineering services, so that it doesn't become commoditized, and that's a big concern that we have. So
Right. And
yeah,
oh,
go
I was
ahead.
just about to say, like, what you're saying rings so true, that I can see in my everyday life. Doctors and lawyers, they get screen time. Whenever there's an issue of the day on the news, you see people picketing and advocating for doctors and for lawyers in front of the legislature. And it seems like everyone has their own Twitter handle that's blowing up with commenting on very topical positions, and they are taken as thought leaders and professionals. But you don't hardly see engineers stepping up to the game and giving their 2 cents. And from a technical perspective, their 2 cents should matter the most sometimes.
Yeah,
But yeah, we
yeah.
need to learn to advocate for ourselves a little better. Do you think?
Well, absolutely. Engineering is seen as the quote unquote silent profession. And
Hmm.
the only time you actually hear or you see an engineer on TV or in the media is when something goes wrong. A bridge collapses or a building caves in or something, and then they talk about what went wrong. We need to ensure that engineers are there to talk about what went right.
Right.
How when a rocket takes off, that's an engineering feat. Fantastic. Let's talk about that. We are able
Exactly.
to land a rover on Mars. Well, that's an engineering feat. Let's talk about that. So we need to do more of that, and part of that is actually building relationships with all levels of government, increasing visibility and recognition of the profession. We do that through hosting conferences and events on major issues, and really celebrating when our recommendations come into policy. Examples of that are, with OSPE, this again, it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but it is it's something that is really going to be shifting how we do infrastructure moving forward. And that is, in 2018, the government of Ontario included OSPE in its Made in Ontario environmental plan. They really did consult us, both the previous Liberal government and now the Conservative government, on understanding where engineers felt some impacts to the environment should be really remediated. And one of the things that we've been talking about for over a decade, and again, it's not sexy, so stay with me, is excess soils, reusing
Hmm.
excess soils. Now, you can imagine how in fertile, rich areas, how soil is so important, for the crops we grow. and how their soil degradation is happening, and it's harder to find clean fill. So one of the things that we really talked about is how do we reuse soil once you dig it out of the ground? How can we make sure that first off, it's clean, and then secondly, it can be reused instead of sent to a dump or sent somewhere where it can never be reused? So in 2021, the government implemented a regulation on on-site and excess soils management. And it was really due to the advocacy that OSPE has been working on for the last, I would say, close to 10 years. And it was so pivotal that it's really changing how infrastructure is happening in the province. And that same government now has come to us and asked us to actually develop the guidelines for professionals to use when they go to reuse that excess soil. So what are the new what are the guidelines? What are the protocols? How are we grading it? How do we ensure that when it's put back into the ground, it's safe, not only clean, but actually safe, and it does have that stability. So again, this is something that the government trusted OSPE to come in and say, okay, can you develop these guidelines for all professionals, not just engineers, but engineers, geoscientists, risk assessors, all professions to use. And I think that is something that, again, is not really appreciated, but is really something that, again, goes to the value that engineers bring.
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. At OSPE, we're here for you, making sure government, media, and the public are listening to the voice of engineers. You can learn more at ospe.on.ca.
So that was a great anecdotal story about how OSPE's advocacy work actually turned into tangible a change and something that we could actually be proud of as an industry going forward. I want to switch gears a bit here and talk about OSPE as an organization and how we connect with our members with respect to advocacy. Can you kind of elaborate on how we engage with our membership and how we're planning to engage more with them with respect to advocacy?
Yeah, so one of the things we need to do is really help engineers understand the importance of advocacy. When you look at engineers and the percentage or market share of engineers who join their advocacy group versus other professions, it's woefully low. So one of the things we need to do is really demonstrate to engineers the value of having a voice, and not only a single voice, but a collective voice. So I look at the Ontario Bar Association. They have, I think, 60% of lawyers join the Bar Association. And why? Because lawyers, as advocates, understand the value of a very strong collective voice. Engineers, I think, sometimes underestimate the value of that. They think, well, I'm an engineer. Of course, the government's going to listen to me. If I go talk to a politician and say, well, as an engineer, I think you should do this. Well, that's great, but you got to remember, you're only one of about 90,000 licensed engineers in the province of Ontario. Where, in OSPE, we are the recognized voice of the profession. We are the recognized voice for engineers in the province of Ontario. So when OSPE speaks, we represent, not only the 90,000 professional engineers, but you've got another 180,000 engineering graduates, 36,000 engineering students. So because we collectively reach out to all of them, we are that collective voice, and it does provide a lot of power. But having said that, we need to do a better voice to ensure that every engineer in the province and every engineering graduate and every student has the ability to provide their perspective. So I already talked about the Engage Forum and having that as an opportunity for members to be involved. I talked about our blogs. Of course, the podcast is fantastic. We have launched something called Eng Talks, which is a video series where engineers who are experts in their fields can share their thoughts and feelings on certain topics. But what I'm really excited about is in October, on October 6th and 7th, we will be launching our very first annual engineering conference called Engineering in the Future. It'll be a virtual conference because of COVID this year, but we have a very impressive lineup of engineers and subject matter experts speaking on a variety of topics.
This is our first annual that we're putting on this year.
First annual. So this is the first annual
Wow.
engineering conference in the province of
Hmm.
Ontario. And again, we have speakers talking about artificial intelligence, engineering leadership, rail electrification, small modular reactors, and so much more. And these are the topics, again, governments and government agencies are struggling to understand. So we have actually invited them to participate in this. But what we want these forums for engineers to attend, provide their perspective,
Hmm.
learn, but also share and engage in the conversation. We
Great.
have Arlene Dickinson is one of our keynote speakers. She's going to talk about, what really drives innovation and entrepreneurship. She's obviously through Dragon's Den and through her own business has interacted with many engineers over the past decade. So she'll bring her perspective on what makes a good pitch, what doesn't make a good pitch. So if we encourage you to attend virtually. The website is engineeringconference.ca. So you'll see the full agenda there. And again, once we all get vaccinated and things get back to normal, we'll continue to get back into in-person member consultations through town halls, focus groups, and committee meetings. But really, the pandemic has demonstrated an ability for us to connect virtually. You don't have to travel. It doesn't have to be a local thing. From anywhere in the province, you can reach out. So moving forward, we're going to have all our events, all our in-person events, where possible, to have them as a hybrid. So those who can't attend in person can still connect and participate online.
That'd be excellent. This conference sounds like a really great opportunity to learn and to hear about things that are up and coming. What's next?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
definitely don't want to miss out.
The other thing I need to mention as well, not just our conference, you're talking about our opportunity for our members to engage. We're about to embark on our new strategic plan this year. So this will, chart the course for the next 3 years in Ontario for OSPE. So at our conference, there's going to be a member assembly, an opportunity for members to provide input on where they think OSPE should be going for the next 3 years. And then as we
Okay.
develop the plan, we'll be doing, again, town halls and member consultations so that they can, again, have the ability to provide the input to direct us over the next 3 years. So we all go where they tell us to go.
Great. That sounds exciting. I hope we get a lot of interest and a lot of people showing up and engaging and asking a lot of questions and putting their input in to help shape the future of OSPE going forward. What would you say to those engineers that are hesitant to providing their input and expertise or voice to OSPE?
That's a good question. My role, I talk to a lot of engineers, both members and not yet members, as I call them, to understand why they're members. Why did they join OSPE, and also find out why they haven't joined OSPE. And the hesitancy, I think, of this servant leadership. This idea of, we're a serving profession. We're there to serve society. And I think leading is a great way to actually serve society. You look at politicians, you ask why they get involved, and it's because of this desire to serve, and really there's no better way to serve society than making sure society's on the right track, to creating that better world, not just for us, but our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. So again, I go back to the idea that engineers have this unique perspective. They have this extensive knowledge and expertise to develop solutions to the problems facing not only Ontario, but facing Canada. Ontario is the only province that has an advocacy association for engineers.
Mm-hmm.
You look in the US, there's a National Society of Professional Engineers, which is the national group, the advocacy group for engineers. But
Right.
every state in the US has their own society as well. So, what is it in Canada? I don't understand this hesitancy to get involved and chart this policy. But really, when you think of it, as an engineer, you're bound by a code of ethics to protect the public and the environment. And there's, beyond doing your best as a professional engineer in your duties to your client and to your company, there's no better opportunity to actually protect the public and the environment than being part of that change agent as a member of OSPE to creating that better world. So think of the influence. We talked about influence earlier, and the reach you can have through OSPE to actually make effective, long-lasting change. So by getting involved with OSPE, not only can you network with colleagues, but you can really make a difference. So I implore you, if you're not yet a member of OSPE, check us out, check out the benefits, but most importantly, think of it as really an obligation of leadership.
Excellent. Well, Sandro, it sounds like you've made an excellent case to get all Ontario's engineers involved in OSPE. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Jerome, before you coming up, I'm gonna switch the channels on you. So you're an OSPE. Not only are you an OSPE member, you're a board member. This is your second term on the board. So what made you join OSPE? Like you were from out of province, from what I remember. You moved into Ontario, and one of the first things you did was join OSPE. So why did you join OSPE? And what were you hoping to achieve by doing that?
You're putting me on the spot today. I'm originally from Ontario. I moved out to Calgary to pursue a job opportunity in energy, and decided I wanted to put down roots back in Ontario. And moving back, I had kind of lost the connections within industry that I had built really over the last 4 years while I was in Alberta. So I found it a really great opportunity to really engage with the community very quickly, get myself back into the scene in Ontario, and at the same time, while I'm making those connections, really be able to have an opinion and voice concern about what I'm seeing in the industry and how I can make it better. So I found it was an opportunity to give back as well as to really make a difference, whether that be seeing different people take steps to improve themselves within industry, or engage with the student engineering population. There's so many different aspects of engagement. And me coming from a political junkie background, I really love the opportunity to liaise with the government and make a change from that level. So there were so many different facets, from EDI to advocacy at the provincial government level, that kept me coming back for more and wanting to engage at that level. So before I was a board member, I was volunteering with the Political Action Network, and that really got me excited about putting my hat into the ring and becoming a board member. So yeah, it was just a really great opportunity to be engaged and make a difference and see that change actually happen. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. It was really engaging, and I think that we learned a lot about the advocacy work that's being done at OSPE. And thank you for that. We've been talking to Sandro Perruzza, the Chief Executive Officer at the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers.
From all of us at OSPE, the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, thanks for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.